Let's get into some Golden State Warriors news. Harrison Graham and Chase Sr. with you. We had an update a couple of days ago, and it is now official. James Wiseman is going to miss the rest of the season. He did have successful surgery on the meniscus injury, but now it's time to recover.
Yeah, and we didn't know, and we still don't know how long that recovery is going to last. It could be anywhere from 4 to 7 weeks. It could be anywhere from several months, depending on the severity of it. And that's a type of injury where you go in, you clean it up, and you repair that meniscus, and you kind of figure out a timeline as far as when he'll return to the court in a couple of weeks and months. It's a slow process, and we'll see what happens. The good thing for James Wiseman, he's only 20 years old, so there's not a lot of tread on the tires. And according to Steve Kerr, he spoke with the media yesterday and said that the surgeon felt great about the surgery, and there are no concerns as far as James Wiseman's long-term health, which is great because when this guy was starting to get it together on the court this year for the Warriors, Harrison, he was flashing and he was playing really well.
Yeah, suppose there's a scenario if the Warriors rally to make the playoffs and maybe win a series somehow, maybe he could return, but all signs are pointing to that he will not return this season. His teammate and leader, obviously, Steph Curry, had this to say about James Wiseman. Said, I hit him earlier today to let him know he has to think bigger picture. He's 20 years old. He's got a lot of basketball ahead of him. He has an opportunity now to flip a terrible situation on its head and work on his body and work on his mind. Good perspective from a guy who dealt with quite a few injuries early on in his career, especially with the ankle issues. Maybe not a knee injury of this caliber, but a guy who just last season missed basically an entire year.
Well, it's pretty wild to think back on because earlier on in Steph Curry's career, those ankles were very problematic,
yes,
and he
were.
kept suffering those injuries. And for a little bit, a lot of people were thinking, okay, you have a smaller, shifty guard who's not the biggest, most physical guy in the world. Maybe those ankle problems could derail his career. He was able to get it together, and you're hoping that James Wiseman will be able to do that too. This is all about the long-term picture for the Golden State Warriors. This is your second overall pick, who when he was on the floor this year played really well and was very productive when he was in sync with this offense. And you saw it with this final stat line this year that there's a lot of potential there. Started to develop an elbow jumper. He was letting it fly from deep a little bit. He reminded me a little bit of a young Chris Bosh. I'm not sure he's going to be that 20 and 10 player that Chris Bosh was during his prime, but I think the makings of him being an all-star are there for James Wiseman.
Yeah, and I think certainly the Warriors have been playing better as of late, but you got to be thinking next season and beyond because you're going to get Clay back, you get a healthy Wiseman back, you still have Steph playing at a very, very high level.
No doubt.
You get this core together, you add another piece, maybe you re-sign Oubre. You're thinking, okay, next year, a year of development for Wiseman.
Warriors might be back, baby.
This could be a legit
The
title
Dubs.
contender in the 2021-2022 season this next year. So James Wiseman set to miss the rest of the season, but the surgery supposedly went very well, and he should be ready to rock for this upcoming year. If you want to wish James Wiseman a speedy recovery, just like the video. All you got to do, hit that thumbs up icon. Show the rookie some love, and he'll be back very, very soon, at least we hope. NBA Rumors is presented by the Newsbreak app. We partnered up with these guys about a month ago, and hey, I downloaded this app right away, and it's been a game changer for me. If you want local news alert based on your zip code, based on your city, keep up with things happening in your community, politics, pop culture, like I said, local news as well, food reviews, new restaurants popping up in your area, the Newsbreak app is for you. Go to chatsports.com/newsbreak. Sports content as well, including some videos from us here at Chat Sports. Chase, I know you're a big fan of this app.
Huge fan, and it's funny because we were talking the other day about how far phones have come, how far apps have come. I remember being in high school, and I'd kind of sneak text under the desk with one of those keyboard phones. Now that I have an iPhone, I have a bunch of apps on it, and one of the apps that I use the most, it's the Newsbreak app, because as you mentioned, everything shows up on one single feed from your local news sources. So basically everything you need to know nationally, locally, in your community, it's right on the Newsbreak app.
Think of it this way. Instead of downloading 10 different apps from different publications, it all comes together in one with Newsbreak. Chatsports.com/Newsbreak. That link will be in the comments. It'll be in the description. Go ahead and download the app today. Let's talk Steph Curry now as, he might be making an MVP push here. He's still a little lower in the odds, but can we talk about the heater this guy has been on? My goodness, Chase.
Yo, in all caps, straight up heater. 9 straight games of 30-plus points. Steph Curry has been going off. He's been playing like an MVP candidate, and he looks like the Steph Curry that was taking the league by storm 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
This guy has been utterly ridiculous, and he now has the Warriors in a spot where they're starting to climb the Western Conference standings a little bit. They just went on their first 4-game winning streak of the season. They're on a crucial East Coast trip right now with more winnable games, so maybe that 4-game winning streak continues to pile up a little bit. And what Steph Curry is doing over his last 9 games, this belongs in the history books, Harrison. It's been outrageous. 38-plus points per game, shooting almost 55% from the floor, more than 91% from the free throw line, and from outside, Harrison, 47%. And before he dropped 30-plus points last night in another win against the Cavs, that figure from three-point range was almost at 50%. It's wild.
It's just unbelievable. And you mentioned it earlier. I mean, the guy's been on a heater. There's just no way around it. Like, it's one thing when you go back, you're like, oh, man, Shaq would have these stretches of, averaging 35 and 15 over a 10-game stretch. Well, yeah, he was 330 pounds, and he just dunked on dudes' heads. Steph is doing these behind-the-back fadeaway threes that he's been doing the last decade, and he's splashing them. I mean, the guy's unreal. Oh, and by the way, some of his key guys are out right now. Yes. Kelly Oubre's been hurt. He's had some players that are out, and he's like, oh, I'll just go ISO ball, and I'll just drop 35 a night. Like, Steph Curry is on a mission. He doesn't want to punt on the rest of the season. No. He wants to make the playoffs, and I think he wants to get into that MVP discussion, and I would not rule it out by any standards at this point. Certainly a gap to close, but I'd say it's closer than it was 2 weeks ago before this 9-game stretch.
He's like 10th right now in the MVP odds, but when I look at MVP candidates, this is how I kind of defined it and I dissect it. If you were to take that player away from their team, how would that team perform? And when he suffered that spinal cord contusion, because he's gone on this heater since coming back from that spinal cord contusion, but when he missed like 5 games, the Warriors honestly look like a G League team. Yeah. Now they look like a legitimate playoff team, and it's all because Steph Curry has literally put the team on his back. And anytime they need a bucket from him, he's been a walking bucket.
You want to measure Steph Curry's value? Go watch the Warriors last year.
Yes.
Like, they were literally the worst team in basketball.
That's why they picked Wiseman number 2.
And he's carried them into being like a 500 squad this year. It's been very, very impressive. I think he should be higher in the MVP votes. I wouldn't say I'd vote for him at this point, but he'd be in my top 5 for sure. And his last several games, he's been very, very impressive. Should Steph be an MVP candidate? Type M for MVP. Type S for slow down. Maybe Chase and I are a little out of control, but I don't think we are. I think the guy's been outrageous the last couple of weeks.
Other teams across the NBA are hitting S. You know why? Because they want Steph Curry to slow down.
Yes.
He's been that elite.
M for MVP or S for slow down. Let's take a look at the NBA playoff picture, Chase, because we are exactly a month away from the final game of the regular season, final games, I should say. May 16th. Today is April 16th. So we got a month of basketball to play before we figure out what the playoffs look like. Now, if you didn't know, slightly different format this year, and I believe this is what it's going to be moving forward. The top 6 teams from the East and the West automatically make the playoffs. They're locked and loaded. So top 6 from each, they qualify once the final games are played and the standings are wrapped up. Now the 7 through 10 seeds in the East and West, they got to play in a play-in tournament for each conference. So East and West, they'll each do a bracket like this. 7 plays 8, and the winner will earn the number 7 seed in the East and in the West. What happens to the loser? Well, I'll tell you in a second. The 9 and the 10 seed play. Winner of that game plays the loser from the 7 and 8 game matchup, and the winner of that game will earn the final playoff spot. Obviously, the loser of the 9-10 game is eliminated from the playoffs, but you better be top 6 if you want to feel comfortable about making the playoffs, because the NBA has kind of stretched this out to where, okay, we'll go 10 deep, and I think they're trying to eliminate tanking a little bit more. I think that's a big incentive of this, and quite frankly, I think they're trying to create excitement in some more important games toward the end of the season.
Well, we see when there are games late in the NBA regular season with the old format, when you see 2 teams battling it out for one of those final seeds, those games are really, really exciting because there's so much to obviously play for. Now, the approach here and the thought process is, okay, if we have a couple of play-in games, that will have the feel and the pressure of some of those games that we would rarely get at the end of the 82 regular game schedule. And I actually like the play-in tournament. As you mentioned, it kind of eliminates tanking. I think it adds some incentive for teams to not tank, but also it gives them hope to actually have something to play for late in the season. And for the NBA, more TV money. And if the NBA gets more TV money, I mean, the fans usually win out on that too, because then teams will have more money to spend. So it's a win-win for all of us,
and
really.
Look, there's some controversy because, like, right now, like, the Bulls are 10 games below 500. Do they really deserve an opportunity to make the playoffs? Probably not, but I'm going to watch.
Do I want Vooch and Zach LaVine in a playoff game?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll take that.
I'm down. It's a little controversial, but you know what? It's more games, and that is certainly fine with me. So let us know. Do you like the play-in tournament, this new formula? Type L for like, type D for dislike. I think overall it's more positive than negative. There's, people have certainly been outspoken. Luka Doncic recently said he wasn't a huge fan, but
Mark Cuban too.
When you sit in that 7 seed, you're not going to be a big fan of it. There's no doubt about that. So L for like or D for dislike. Get your votes in, and we'll obviously update the standings here as we'll continue to do so toward the final stretch run here. That number 1 seed, it's getting tight. Suns and Clippers making moves there. The Jazz still holding firm at 41-14. Suns just a game back. Clippers 3 back. The Nuggets, obviously, we'll see what happens to them moving forward. The brutal Jamal Murray injury is big blow for them, certainly. We'll see if they can rally. They added Austin Rivers. He should give them some depth. The Los Angeles Lakers at 34-22. That is the number 5 seed right now. Then 6 through 10 gets a little crowded there to try and get into that top 6 chase because Portland's holding it right now, but then Dallas, they're a game back. The Grizzlies are a couple of games back. Golden State is 500 at 28-28. They've won 4 in a row. And then the San Antonio Spurs hanging on to that number 10 seed. So it'll be interesting. Again, the top 6 in each conference automatically make the playoffs. The Eastern Conference are as follows here. Chase, why don't you take this one away?
Yeah, Sixers in at first place, 38-17. They've been jockeying back and forth with the Brooklyn Nets, who are at 37-18, a game back in that win column. The Milwaukee Bucks just got Giannis back. He returned after a few games out because of knee soreness. They've been playing red-hot basketball in at 35-20. The Atlanta Hawks streaking up the standings in the Eastern Conference. Since firing Lloyd Pierce, Nate McMillan has taken the post for the Hawks. They've been playing awesome basketball, been one of the most exciting teams to watch. The Boston Celtics have won 5 games in a row at 30-16. They have overtaken the 5th place in the Eastern Conference, Celtics 30-26. And Knicks, Heat, Hornets, Pacers, Bulls, I'd say that 6 through 8 spot, Harrison, and then you can throw the Pacers in there at the 9 spot. I'm not worried about the Bulls because they're 4 games back in the win column from that 10th to 9th spot, but 6 through 9, really interchangeable. Going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, and what stands out in the East is Boston's really starting to play well, and they're trying to assert themselves as a potential playoff team. So that's how the playoff standings sit. That's the latest playoff picture. We'll continue to update as we get closer to the NBA playoffs.